Dear Mr. Stew, my 9-year-old has been on ADHD medication for a few months now. At first, we saw some improvement, but lately his teacher mentioned he's having a harder time focusing again. She suggested we might need to increase the dose, but I'm wondering if medication is the only factor here. Are we maybe relying on the medication too much to solve things? How should we think about this when trying to support him? This is one that comes up in my office every single day, whether it be parents asking about medication or whether it be teachers calling in to discuss students who might need medication. You are correct that it does sound like you might be relying too much on medication as what is making the difference for your child. There are a lot of things to consider. Let me give you just a real basic breakdown of my philosophy on medication. And no, I'm not a prescribing doctor, so I'm not one that can make adjustments to medication, and I'm not the only person that you should listen to about medication. But with mental health medication, there is only one medication in all of mental health that was designed for children. All other mental health meds that are prescribed to children are adult mental health medications that we are hoping will work for children. And there hasn't been too long that we've been trying that out. So keep that in mind. And just know that medication is for times of danger. Either the child is dangerous to themselves or to others, or distress where they really cannot function because of this disorder that's going on in them. If it's just discomfort, either the child is uncomfortable or their teacher is uncomfortable, that is not a reason to medicate a child. But to get directly to your question, you said that the child saw some progress and then now they're showing some regression in that progress, and that the teacher recommended upping the dose of medication. Just like I said, medication is not my job. Medication is not a teacher's job. A teacher should not be saying that a child needs to change anything about their dosage of medication. They can report specifics. They can say, hey, it seems like they are struggling more to focus. Or, hey, it seems like really they are on track. Or, hey, it seems like every day around this time, this starts to happen. But they should not be recommending anything about medication. It's just not their job. Just like it's not my job to change anything about medication, it's not a teacher's job to change anything about medication. So just because they have said there might need to be a dosage change does not mean that there needs to be a dosage change. And this also goes into something that I see all the time, that people they put too much on relying on medication, or they believe too much about the medication, or they believe that the medication is what's doing all of the work. So when children are on medication and they're doing well, they praise the medication and not how hard the child is working on the medication. Or when things start to not go well, they start to blame the medication and not the system that might be in place that is causing it to be so difficult for the child to be successful. Medication does not in and of itself change behavior. Medication provides a framework for the brain so that the brain can reach a baseline level so that the child can then make better decisions, or so that they are prepared for certain things. But medication does not change behavior. If a child's behavior is improving, it is because the child is working harder. And if a child's behavior is starting to regress, it doesn't necessarily mean that the child isn't working hard or that the medication isn't doing what it's supposed to do. It could just be that the system that is set up for the child is one where they are unable to be successful. In schools today, we ask kids to sit still and be quiet all day long. For 8 hours of the day, children are expected to just sit still and be quiet. That is not a developmentally appropriate expectation of children. And I will scream it from the rooftops That is not a developmentally appropriate expectation of children. Children should be given breaks. Children should be allowed to move. Children should be allowed to play. Children should be allowed to do a lot of things. And so if it's just this 9-year-old child is not able to sit still and be quiet for an entire school day, that doesn't mean that medication is failing. It doesn't mean that the child is not working hard. It may mean we need to adjust our expectation of children sitting still and being quiet for 8 hours of a day. I am a well-adjusted adult, and I do not sit still and be quiet for 8 hours a day. And I think you would be hard-pressed to find even an adult in today's world who sits still and is quiet for 8 hours of the day. So we don't need to expect that of children either. But if the child is doing better, praise them. Don't say, oh, I'm so glad the medication is working, because then that tells the child, oh, you must not be putting in any effort at all. Or it tells the child, if anything happens, we are to blame it on the medication. None of this is your fault at all. We can't set up those systems. So if the child is doing well, let's look at how hard that child is working and how hard the teachers in that child's life are working to provide supportive environments for that child to thrive. If the child starts to regress, let's not first look to just crank up a dosage of medication, because again, that's not even medication's job. But let's look and see, hey, are there some other things that we can try before we may need to adjust a medication? Are there just some expectations that are unrealistic? Are there some other things, like can we allow the child to fidget? Can we give them some movement breaks? Can we do any number of other things before we add on medication? Don't praise medication for positive change, and don't blame medication for regression when it happens. Look at the full system and don't give medication that much credit. Hopefully that was a helpful answer. If it was, make sure to like this video and subscribe on whatever channel you might be watching, so that more people can find it and so that I know that it was helpful for you. Thanks so much for writing in. Yes, medication. It's just one of those things that I feel like I got to talk about as often as I can. Just a little side note, the CDC has reported that 14% of children in America are on mental health medications. And again, only one medication, mental health medication, was designed for children. All of the others are just a big experiment. So we've got to be very careful and cautious and hold back as much as we can before we prescribe a medication that wasn't even intended for a child, because then those medications also have side effects, and then you're going into this tangled web of things. So if medication is required because of danger or distress, I get it, but also work with your prescribing psychiatrist or physician to talk with them about what are the things where we can know the child is ready to start backing off and eliminating that medication over time, because we don't want them to just be taking a pill forever. We want them to know that they can do it too, when at all possible. There are some people who are on medication for their life. There's no shame in that. But if there are milestones that we can watch for to say, okay, they're ready now, let's back it off. Or, hey, they're ready now, let's try them without medication. Always be talking with the doctor to be watching for those things so that the child is not dependent on medication. Thanks so much.